Have you ever wondered what truly shapes a person? Is it the grand decisions, the turning points we choose in front of the world? Or is it found in the silent moments, when we face our conscience alone, in a desolate place where no one is there to judge? These are the moments when a single footstep can decide whether we remain a ghost of the past, or become the one who lights a flame for the future. I invite you now, to begin. For Elias Thorne, silence was not an empty space. It had form, it had weight, and for the past 10 years, it had been his only companion. The silence of the red rock mesas that stood defiant against time, the silence of the Arizona sky where the sun was a giant, unblinking eye, and above all, the silence within his own home, where 3 empty chairs at the dinner table had long since stopped waiting. That day, he was tracking a stray heifer. A simple reason, a tedious chore that had pushed him farther than usual, into a canyon they called the Devil's Breath. The wind here moaned with ghostly sounds, and the air was thick with the smell of dust and despair. And then, amidst the familiar silence, he heard a wrong sound. It was not of nature. Not the warning of a rattlesnake, not the howl of the wind. It was a faint whimper, a fragile thread of sound about to snap in the vast emptiness. Elias reined in his horse, his entire body tensing. His eyes scanned the bizarre shapes of the sandstone cliffs. And he saw it. A wrong shape, hanging from a dead branch. It dangled like the bitter fruit of the earth, suspended between the cliff face and the chasm below. As he drew closer, the shape resolved into a horrifying clarity, a young woman. Her raven black hair fell like a mournful cascade, her tattered clothes revealing skin brutalized by sun and wind. The rope around her neck was not tight enough to grant a swift end, but just enough to turn every breath into an act of torture. Elias's heart felt as if it were seized by an invisible hand. But what made the blood freeze in his veins was the crude wooden sign dangling beneath her feet. The letters were gouged into the grain, as if written with hatred itself. White men don't forgive. His entire world shrank to 3 things: the dying woman, the deadly inscription, and the memory that rushed back like a flash flood. The smell of smoke. A swallowed scream. The image of a small sister's hand, gone limp. The past he had tried to bury under 10 years of silence was now alive, roaring in his ears. Instinct screamed at him, turn back. This is not your affair. You chose solitude for a reason, to be safe. His hand trembled, hovering between his horse's reins and the hilt of the dagger at his hip. To turn away was to live. To turn away was to let the ghosts continue to gnaw at him every night. He looked up at the woman. Another shallow breath fluttered in her chest. A choice. A silent moment. The dry swish of the blade slicing through the rope also severed the final thread of safety Elias had wrapped around himself for a decade. He caught her featherlight body, a life so fragile it felt like a myth. The faint scent of dried herbs and blood met his nostrils. He laid her across his horse and turned back towards his farm, towards an unknown future. He didn't know if he was carrying home a person, a world of trouble, or perhaps, his own redemption. He only knew that for the first time in years, the 3 empty chairs at home felt a little less cold. Inside Elias Thorne's small log cabin, the air grew thick with a new kind of silence, one of wary, fearful observation. He laid the Apache woman on his own bed, his movements slow and deliberate, trying not to make any sudden sound that might startle her. He gently cleaned the grime from her face with a damp cloth, revealing the bruises and scrapes beneath. Her neck was horribly swollen. As he patiently offered a spoonful of water sweetened with honey, he noticed she kept her right hand clenched around a small leather pouch, even in her semi-conscious state. It was a talisman, a secret. When he lightly tried to touch it, a weak, guttural growl escaped her throat and she recoiled. He understood it was inviolable. He didn't know it held her entire heritage, the secret healing herbs of her tribe, the last remnant of her family. The next days passed in silence. The woman, he did not know her name was Nita, spoke not a word. Her large, dark eyes tracked his every move like a cornered animal. She would only eat when he left the food and walked away. Elias respected her silence. He understood that trust, like anything in this barren land, needed time to grow. Their fragile peace was shattered one afternoon by the thud of approaching hooves. U.S. Cavalry. Leading them was Lieutenant Fletcher, a man with eyes as sharp as razors and a permanent smirk. "Afternoon, Thorne," Fletcher called out, his voice casual but weighted with authority. "Hunting a fugitive. An Apache girl. Caused some trouble, they say." "Haven't seen anyone," Elias replied, his voice flat as he blocked the doorway. Fletcher's eyes scanned the yard, then stopped at the threshold. He noticed a dropped piece of dried herb. "This smell, not your usual hay." He squinted into the dark cabin. "And I could swear I see a long, black hair on your floor." "Must be from my horse," Elias said, his heart pounding. Fletcher chuckled without humor. "Your horse has long, fragrant hair, Thorne? Interesting." His demeanor hardened. "Listen. There's a bounty, but more importantly, harboring a fugitive is a serious crime. A lie carries a heavy price in this land. I'll be back, Thorne. You can count on it." Inside, Nita had heard everything. She had seen how Elias stood like a rock in the doorway to protect her. When he came back inside, her gaze had changed. The wild animal was gone, replaced by a flicker of consideration. That evening, she broke her silence, not with words, but with a drawing. Using charcoal from the stove, she drew a bird rising from a circle of fire, her family's symbol. Then, in broken, halting English, she told him her story, of a peaceful village attacked, of her family murdered, of being framed for a crime she didn't commit. Listening, Elias felt the old scar on his arm ache. He went to a chest and took out a small, cloth doll, his sister's. He placed it on the table beside the drawing of the bird in the fire. "I understand," he said. That single phrase bridged the chasm between their two worlds. But just as the seed of trust began to sprout, a new danger arrived. A posse from the town, led by a bounty hunter named Bart Shaw. For Shaw, this was personal. He believed Apaches had killed his family years ago. "Thorne, send out the savage," Shaw roared. "We know she's in there." Elias looked at Nita. Her eyes were no longer just fearful, they held a new resolve. They had to run. Elias's life of solitude was over. Nita's life on the run had to continue. But this time, neither of them was alone. The starless night sky was black as ink. Wind, hot and gritty, began to whip through the canyons. Elias and Nita moved in darkness, their escape a silent, desperate prayer. Behind them, the small farm, Elias's entire world, was swallowed by the night. Their goal was the Dragoon Mountains to the south, a rugged wilderness where they hoped to lose their pursuers. But the land itself was an enemy. The wind grew into a full-blown sandstorm, a maelstrom of stinging grit that blinded them and erased the world. In this chaos, their roles reversed. Elias, master of his land, was now lost. It was Nita, daughter of the wilderness, who became their guide. She took the reins of his horse, her eyes reading the language of the wind and rock that he could not. She led him not with words, but with an instinct born from the earth itself. Elias had no choice but to surrender his fate to her. She found shelter in a narrow fissure between two massive boulders. Inside, the world fell quiet. Nita opened her leather pouch. She gave Elias bitter leaves to chew that soothed his parched throat and applied a poultice of crushed roots to his cuts. He watched in silent awe. Her pouch was not a trinket, but a library of survival. As soon as the storm subsided, a gunshot ripped through the dawn quiet. Nowhere to run, Thorn. Bart Shaw's voice echoed from a ridge above. They had been ambushed. Run, Nita. Go. Elias yelled, pushing her behind a rock as he drew his pistol. He knew he was outmatched, but he could buy her time. He saw her hesitate, torn between survival and something new. Go. He roared. Just then, a bullet found its mark. A searing pain shot through Elias's shoulder, and his arm went numb. He collapsed, his pistol skittering away. It's over, Thorn, Shaw sneered. Elias closed his eyes, waiting for the final shot. But instead, he heard a sharp cry. He opened his eyes to see Nita scrambling away, not towards safety, but along the cliffside, drawing their fire. Her small form was impossibly swift, a blur of motion against the rock. Her gambit gave Elias the chance he needed. He crawled towards his gun. But Nita did the unthinkable. She turned back. As Shaw's men reloaded, she sprinted to Elias, her small frame filled with a surprising strength. She hauled him to his feet and began dragging him towards a deeper, narrower ravine she had spotted earlier. A final bullet hissed past them as they disappeared into the crevice. The ambush was over. But Elias was bleeding badly, and they were trapped, with the enemy circling outside. The battle for their lives had only just begun. Inside the deep, cool ravine, Elias slumped against the cold rock, his shirt a dark stain of crimson. A fever was rising, and he began to drift into delirium. The locked doors of his memory burst open. Sarah, Sarah, run. He mumbled, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, I wasn't fast enough, I'm sorry. Nita sat beside him, listening quietly. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the pain. She saw the true source of his scars. For the first time, she saw beyond the man who had saved her and saw the broken soul within. Her empathy became a bridge between them. She tended to him with the wisdom from her leather pouch. She made a poultice to stop the bleeding and brewed a dark, potent tea from roots to fight the infection. She did not sleep. She kept vigil, bathing his feverish head, her gentle hands soothing the nightmares of a white man. She, the savage, was healing the wounds of his past with the heritage of her own. When dawn broke, the fever had subsided. Elias awoke, weak but clear-headed. The first thing he saw was Nita's face, exhausted but resolute, framed in the soft morning light. They sat in a new kind of silence, one filled with unspoken understanding. Thank you, he whispered, his voice hoarse. She only nodded. I still don't know your name, he said, a simple question that held a universe of respect. She looked directly into his eyes, and for the first time, she smiled, a small, sad, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face. Najona, she said. My name is Najona. Najona, Elias repeated, tasting the new word. What does it mean? It means beautiful, she replied. The name echoed in the small space, not just as an identity, but as an affirmation. It was a symbol of the beauty of life, of courage, and of the hope they had found together in the depths of despair. In that moment, they were no longer just Elias and the Apache girl. They were Elias and Najona, a soul who had healed each other, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Months passed. The harshness of the mountains gave way to the green promise of spring. Far to the south, in a valley nourished by a gentle river, Elias and Najona had built a new life. They constructed a small cabin, not far from the water's edge. It was smaller than Elias's old ranch, but it was warm and full of life. There were no empty chairs here. Their new life was a quiet rhythm of shared tasks. He taught her to garden, she taught him which wild plants were food and which were medicine. They fished in the river and spoke in a language of their own, made of short sentences, shared glances, and a deep understanding forged in hardship. The scar on Elias's shoulder had healed, a reminder not of guilt, but of sacrifice. The greatest symbol of their future was growing every day. Najona was with child. Their baby was living proof that love could blossom from the ashes of grief, a union of two worlds. The bird in the fire she had once drawn was no longer a symbol of destruction, but of rebirth, a phoenix rising. One afternoon, a stranger appeared. He was a young man in a worn cavalry uniform. Elias's first instinct was to reach for his rifle. "I'm looking for a man named Thorn, and an Apache woman," the soldier said, his voice hesitant. "I'm Miller," he explained. "I served under Lieutenant Fletcher. I'm not here to arrest anyone. I'm here with news." He told them that one of Bart Shaw's men, arrested for another crime, had confessed everything. The attack on Najona's village had been orchestrated by a greedy landowner who wanted their territory. The crime she was accused of was a lie. Fletcher's name was disgraced, Miller said. "And your name," he looked at Najona, "your name and your tribes have been cleared. The warrant is gone. You're free." The news was not a thunderclap, but a gentle rain, washing away the last stains of the past. The truth, however late, had finally been told. After the young soldier departed, Elias and Najona stood by the river. She placed a hand on her belly, where new life stirred. He wrapped his arms around her. They watched the quiet river flow, a constant current carrying away old sorrows and bringing new beginnings. They had found their family, not in the blood they were born to, but in the love that protected them. They had found their freedom, not from a piece of paper, but in forgiveness and the courage to start anew. Their story would not be written in any history book, but it would be told every day, in the laughter of a child soon to be born, in the warmth of a home, and in the unextinguished flame of human kindness, a fire they had lit together in the heart of the wilderness.